Hi and welcome to the living room. Please ignore this mess down here. I was pulling the orchids who live on that empty shelf out and I knocked one over because it was hooked onto another one. Didn't notice it, so I've got some cleaning up to do. But I was also thinking, since I have this shelf empty, I might move the ladies who sit on this shelf down here and the orchids who live on this shelf up here. Haven't quite decided. But today I am going to talk about how I care for my dendrobiums, which once I got them all together, I did not realize I had as many as I did. I thought I had maybe 6, 7, 10 at the most. Got a few more than that. But I want to start with the ones that we hardly ever see, because this one is the, according to what it was sold as, the porpox, Dendrobium porpox. It lives on the wall by the front door. So I don't really focus on it that much, but I do water her about every 3 days is when I let the moss completely dry out. I do pour water all into those crevices, which I believe creates a little bit of humidity, but I wait until the moss, until the moss is dried out, and you can see we have some beautiful roots growing. It is not growing quickly yet, but I've only had it a couple of months, but we have some beautiful roots right there. Lots of new little grow tips on the ends. So that's doing okay. And then we have this one, which I'm going to show you the name because I'm not going to pronounce it. I always mess it up. This one here. I've had this one for, I think, about a year, maybe 18 months. I used to grow it in a pot and it didn't do very well. So I placed it on this mount, and this mount has, let me lay it down here. So this mount has this crevice that goes right down there. It's about that deep. So I just set the orchid in there with no moss in the crevice itself. And then I just put moss all the way around. And since then, she's bloomed several times. I just cannot get those blooms to open up, but she's got lots and lots of new growth. It grows in the kitchen over the sink by a west-facing window, and that's kind of why she grows kind of off to the side, off to our right there. You can look, a lot of her growth is heading that way. She's done much better since I put her on the mount. So if you have this one, it's in a pot not doing well, put it on a mount, watch it grow. Look at all those beautiful roots in there. And all that lovely new growth. If I can get it to focus. Oh, I see another new growth right there. So last time I counted, she has about 10 to 15, depending on if I miss one or count one extra, new growth on there. Loving this one. Again, this one I water probably about every 3 to 4 days because it is in the kitchen, a little more humidity in there. This moss doesn't dry out quite as quickly as on the porpox. So let me set you on the tripod and then let's talk about the rest of them. I was going to stand and show you all the orchids, so I might still get up, but I really needed to sit down. Does anybody ever get like that? You just need to sit for some reason. Now I'm going to show you a couple of my oldest dendrobiums, the one who kind of started all this. This one here is my Dendrobium Lindleyi. Every time I talk about this orchid on here, I always say I need to go back into my Brookside orchids and see when I got this one. Never do it. So I'm going to make myself a little reminder right down here in the video. Check the date. This one I really think is several pieces on here because she has a direction of growth right here. So this one here is her latest growth on this side. She's grown these 3 growths. So this one, and then this one, this past season of 2023. This one she just finished off in January. And then we have a direction of growth over here where she did this one first, kind of a smaller, and then the last one she did over here was this one. And then we have some smaller growths right down here in the bottom kind of center portion. And right now, we also, this growth grew, and then we have this new growth coming here. I water this one every day because the moss on here is not very thick. It's a thin layer of moss. But again, I will put water all into the creases and crevices to kind of help with extra humidity. I'm going to hang her right here and get her off the table. So just bear with me real quick, guys, while I find places to put these. And then this is one of our ICPUs. Okay, I really need to move something out of the way here, guys. Hold on. I'm going to put her right here because I will be knocking stuff over if I don't. But this is a Roy Toganaga, and I'm probably saying that incorrectly, but it's the best I can do. Let me put it down that way. There we go. But Roy Toganaga, I got it from the Orchid Supply Store. So as you can see, Ken also sells orchids. The ICPUs are Intensive Plant Care Unit orchids. I showed you in a couple of Saturday strollings, has this lovely new growth here. And that one little section right down here, you can barely see that little green speck in there, might be another growth. Not sure if it's going to develop. Recently, as in recently, like yesterday, I gave her some CalMag, no seaweed, just some CalMag. Now, all of my mounted orchids, I do fertilize them at every watering, and they all get watered anywhere from every day to every 3 to 4 days. I water them at a very, very low concentration of MSU fertilizer. It's just the fertilizer I prefer. I have tried others in the past, just like the results I've got with the MSU. No sponsorship. It's anywhere between 50 and 100 parts per million. If they are in active growth, they get closer to the 100 parts per million. If they're still actively with roots, but no vegetative growth is coming along, then that's when I put it closer to the 50. For the last 3 to 4 weeks, they've been getting closer to 30, really, because I've been trying to be a little more conservative. It's one of the things I'm going to try this year is kind of use a lower fertilizer TDS, but water a little bit more often. So instead of like soaking them, I'm just going to kind of flush them with fertilizer, if you will, and then see what happens. That's the plan. I don't know if I'm going to follow through on that. But while we are talking about ICPU orchids, we do have these two lovelies here. No, not that one. Duh. Where is it? Hold on. Oh, it's over here. I've just got so much going on in my face right now that it's hard to see them all. Let me move that one out of the way. So these three right here, which you can't see, but I will show you, are all this one here. Let me just pull out one tag and show you. So this is the Dendrobium Berguna Green Bergina. See, I'm horrible with names. So if you're new here, don't expect me to know all the names correctly. In my head, I'm saying them right, but once it comes out of my mouth, it just doesn't translate correctly. But this is one of the canes that is left. There was a handful of canes. We only have that one left, but it has produced 2 keikis, which are doing really well. And then we have a nice new one coming in right there. Do you see it? Isn't that beautiful? And then this is also the same, which, as you can see, there are lots of dried dead canes in here, but what you can also see are all of the new babies and growths coming out. Now, she had a keiki in here at one point, which is now sitting in here with my Sonochi's Wine Delight, which I think is pretty much gone. But I'm going to take the little keiki out, but I just wanted to show you real quick. So it's just sitting in some moss, and I just keep the moss damp. It looks wet right now because I just sprayed it down. So eventually it will all absorb down here because this is still kind of dry. It'll all absorb and be damp. Right now it's wet. As with anything, when you first water it, it's wet. There's no fertilizer in this one here. But what I noticed with my keiki is, so all of those little roots, kind of the tips were dying off, even though I was spritzing it. But I do see a nice, beautiful new growth. So I'm trying to save the growth. And I just have the roots sitting on top of the moss to kind of help with humidity, and hopefully eventually maybe those roots will activate and we will get that other keiki to grow a little bit. All right, I'm just going to set these over here. And this This one sits on a little table behind me in front of an east-facing window, kind of overshadowed with some other orchid and plant leaves. And then the two greens, these two grow right down here on this shelf you see kind of in the background. They grow in there, and I'm trying to move stuff out of the way because, like I said, I've just got a lot over here going on. All right, now to my oldest dendrobium that I have, which is a Dendrobium Kingianum. This one I got back in 2019 as a seedling. I did actually order this offline. I cannot remember the company I ordered it from. Let's see if I can see it on the tag. Insanity, Orchid Insanity. So I probably got it off of Amazon. Let me see if I can move some of this out of the way so I can really get her in to the lens. I may have to move the lens up a little bit just so I can get there. Ah, there we go. Now we can see this gorgeous thing. It's actually two pieces. So when I initially got it, I got it with, I don't know if you can see without me messing things up, but do you see these little itty bitty canes right here? Those are all from 2019. And like I said, it's two pieces because when I went to repot it the first time, it was two pieces in there, and it has since kind of intertwined and grown together. I grew this outside in 2023, and it did marvelously. The grasshoppers didn't damage it too much, except for it did damage, let me see if I can find it, this new growth right here, this one right here, this one right here, it did damage that one. It was nice and growing, and it was right at almost this leafing stage that you see this one is at. And I walked out to check on them, and I saw two of them mating. One was eating it while they were mating. Quickly got rid of that and then had to cut it back because it just looked horrible. But since then has put off all of this growth, which I'm expecting new growth off of each one of the growths from last year, which she did 7 new growths last year. This one just popped up out of nowhere. I noticed it a few weeks ago, and she is starting to leaf out now. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that it might bloom for me next year in 2024, 25, towards the end of the year. I know springtime, I think they also will bloom. From what I understand, these will bloom twice a year, so I might get blooms in the spring. Who knows? But what I do with this one, she is an all small bark. No perlite, nothing else, just small bark. There are some little leca pieces in there just because I used them as filler, but you can see all of the gorgeous root growth in there. And on the top, you can see her exploding with root growth as well. This one was my test dummy, so to speak. This Kingianum has been through some things. I almost lost it a few times. Finally, I think I got it right with just keeping it in the small medium bark. I said small bark, but it's small medium bark. It is the Orchiata Bark from the Orchid Supply Store, which you can get a 12% discount by using coupon code TRISH. I've started keeping her in here with, and there's barely any rocks in there. They're all just little tiny rock pieces. It's like the little small pebble rocks you can buy. Just to kind of create a little bit of humidity around her, just because she does dry out quite quickly. This one gets watered probably once a week. I'm going to say once a week, at least every 7 days. And how I water this one is I do soak it for about 10-15 minutes, and then I just take her out and drop her in. All of the others that you see that we're going to look at as far as fertilizer, I fertilize them all at 150 to 300 parts per million, depending on what they're doing. Guess what this girl gets? 300 parts per million every watering. So she is also very thirsty, and I know the bark has something to do with that. It's new bark. It dries out really quick because she just recently was repotted into that in 23, I believe, in April of 23. So she's been in that bark for about a year, and that's one of the reasons I like to soak my orchids that are in new bark, just so that it stays damp a little bit longer. Here is one of my newer acquisitions, and again, I said this when I purchased it and first told you guys about it. This is Nina from Ninja Orchid. This is her fault. If you've not seen her unicum, go check out that video. It's beautiful, but this is what it is. Okay, it's Dendrobium unicum. It's the giant, is that horn? Yes, giant green horn. I can't read today. No, giant horn. Giant horn crossback to sibling. I didn't even really pay attention to the cross. I just saw unicum and I said mine. It is still in its original nursery pot. I'm going to assume it's all moss because there was just moss on the top that I could see. I just put the bark on here to keep the moss from growing algae and to help keep the moss damp a little bit longer. Now this growth that you see here has been growing since I got her. Hold on, I thought I saw a mealybug. It was just a little piece of the cane coming off there. But it looks like she is, yep, she's getting ready to do her terminal spike, I believe, right here. Now, once I really see some active roots growing on this new growth, I'm putting this one on a mount. And if I can, because I want her to grow upside down. From what I understand, these guys can get pretty long. The canes can get pretty long, and I don't really want that on my shelf, flippy-flopping. I already have a Cattleya that's like that. This one probably gets about 100 parts per million just because it is in moss, and I give it that every other watering because moss will retain some of the excess fertilizer that's in there, and I don't want to over-fertilize. Everyone is going to be getting, and I think I already told you guys this, but for those of you who haven't seen that video, I am going to be giving everyone a CalMag seaweed mixture this month of February because next month is spring. I'm so excited, so excited. Today, it's actually a beautiful day outside, but it's going to snow later. Kind of mad about that. Then we have our Dendrobium chocolate chip. I'm going to call her 2.0 because I did have the Dendrobium chocolate chip again early on in my career of collecting orchids. Quickly killed it because I overwatered her. Because I thought with these smaller canes, we're here at the bottom with the small bulbs, that they needed more water. Well, no, she didn't. She didn't need as much water as I was giving her. And when I say I overwatered her, guys, I was like watering her every other day, not allowing it to dry out. So, yeah, I killed her. So this one I got at my local nursery, Nick's Nursery here. And she has, if I can see, that gorgeous root coming right on along. And then she does have this new growth right here that is finishing off. And I think I see a couple of little possible spikes getting ready to come along. Cute little orchid, very cute little orchid. Which one is next? Let's talk about the only two Noblies I have. So these, I don't know, guys. My Dendrobium Second Love I've had since 2020. It has done more growth in the year of 22 to 2023. It actually grew 1, 2, 3 canes, is working on that new cane right there. And I know it is not, it's a Nobly type. So this one I do keep kind of lower in the grow space. It actually sits on one of the bottom, at the very bottom of the shelf that I have, that rolls that I told you guys I got for Christmas. It's because it's cooler, and this time of the year it is said that they need to be in a cool area. She does get some bright light, not as bright as she probably needs, but I really just want her to focus on thickening up, getting more strength. Let me see something. Hold on a tick. Hold on a tick. We might have an attempt at a bulb, at a spike. I don't know if you guys can see that down there, but right by my finger, there's something that's a little bit more advanced than it was a couple of weeks ago. So she may, if it's a Nobly though, I know they don't bloom from there. They usually bloom from the sides of the cane, so maybe that's just my hopes. Either way it goes, I would really like her to bloom one day, but I'm probably off a little bit. I know it has been said, and I've researched that these can bloom at a young age. We'll have to wait and see. I don't know. And then this one here is another no ID. No, it's not. It's a named one. Obviously, I don't know my dendrobiums like I know my phals. It's Dendrobium Fancy Angel Lychee, which if you guys have never had that fruit, it's delicious. But she grew this cane, or he, again, depending on, I'm not a word person as far as like this word is a masculine word, this word is a feminine word, so referring that way, I just basically call all my orchids she. So if you call your dendrobiums he, don't come at me. But anywho, this here is one of the canes that it finished after it flowered, because I did buy it in bloom. Has since grown these two, which are still pushing out leaves. It also sits basically on the floor by the east-facing window, so getting nice bright light, but not like strong light, because I'm hoping next year these canes develop, and then this growing season some more canes develop. I can give it that cool down that they require, so that I can give it, or I have heard that you can also, not necessarily the cool down, but give it brighter light. I'm going to try to get these two to bloom in 2025. I'm not going to attempt it this year. If they do it on their own, that's wonderful. Wonderful. Let's see, I have this one. This is another Dendrobium taganaga that I purchased that has two beautiful new growths on it and lots of roots growing. Again, got some little aquarium pebbles down there at the bottom to help hold in some humidity, just to keep it a little more damp, because this is a Loria type, and I believe all but a couple of them are all going to be Loria moving forward. If you want an easy growing orchid, guys, and if you grow in your home, guys, let me tell y'all, these Lorias, once they establish themselves and settle in, oh my God, they are so easy. They really, really are. All I do with these guys is make sure that I water them just as the media is drying out, because they do prefer to stay a little more damp than other dendrobiums. Not saying they can't handle a drought, because Lord knows mine have been through some droughts. But in my experience and in my environment, which is in my living room, average temperature anywhere from 70 to 80. Generally, it's between 73, 75. I don't use a humidifier for like a room humidifier or anything like that. They have just, once they've figured out that they like it here, they've just gone crazy. This year, well, from 23 to now, this cane grew and this cane grew. This one here and this one here are getting ready to harden off and finish off. And the previous leaves all had two, or canes had two leaves. This one only has two, but this one, can you see it? It has 3 leaves on it now, which from what I understand and what I've noticed with my other ones is usually once they start growing the 3 leaves, that is when they will start producing blooms. So hopefully one day I can see this gorgeous Roy Taganaga, be it on here on my ICPU, doesn't matter. I just need to see it. And again, all the Lotorias, because I do keep them more damp than I do dry, they usually will get about 100, 150 parts per million of fertilizer. Just putting that out there. And they do grow underneath the grow lights at the beginning of the video. That's their home for 90% of them, okay? Another Loria here. Again, I purchased from my local garden center, Nick's Nursery. Over here, she has, I just noticed, 2 more new growths coming along. So we've got, and I've had this one since March of 2023, but this one has, well, maybe you can see that. This growth here, and this growth here. Do you see that little small growth right there? Now this one is in layered moss and medium bark with some perlite. The Orchiata is in just moss and bark just kind of mixed together, but this one I layered here, and as you can see, yes, there's a little bit of algae, but that's because the pot doesn't cover the whole thing. But down here at the bottom, she's fine. I'm not worried about the algae too much because it's not in the entire pot. It's not really affecting too much, but she is starting, yep. So I bought this one in bloom, but it looks like we're gonna have another snowflake. Let me move that leaf out of the way so you can see right there. And that one was already bloomed there. As a matter of fact, you can see it. This one, the spike is already starting to pop out. So we are gonna see those cute little white flowers. I say shortly. We all know in the orchid world, shortly means months, weeks. All right, put that over there. Sorry for my squeaky chair, guys. It's an old chair, but I love it because it's firm. Lets me sit up straight. We'll talk about that one in a minute because that's not a Loria. Let's talk about the Lotorias. Oh, this is another Orchiata ICPU that I got from Ken. It is in a moss and bark mixture, and those roots don't look too shabby, but I can tell that it does not need to be watered at the moment. And this is the one that I actually knocked over because it was hooked onto my royal chip right here. But let's see if we have, all right, so we may have a spike coming. If not, at least it attempted it. But lots and lots of new root growth going down in there. A lot of it is covered up with this small bark that I had to put on top. And all I do when I have to top it off, I don't use my hands. I just tap so that I don't damage any of the root tips with pressure. Excuse me. Now, this one's an active growth, so any that don't have moss in them are usually getting 300 parts per million if they're doing root growth, attempting to bud, all of the jazz stuff. Average humidity in my living room has been running about 40% for the last 6 to 12 months. So I'm happy about that. We'll talk about that one in a second. Talk about this one. I'm so excited for this one, guys. So this I got from Orchid Supply Store. I did purchase it, so I do purchase things from Ken. I love it. So when I got this, it had this growth here that was just a baby, little baby, because I've had this since March of last year, 23. So it developed this one, but look at the growth on this one. So it is a little bit fatter, not much, but a little bit fatter. But the best part is, look what we have. We have 1, 2, 3 leaves. Everybody else has 2. We have 3 on here. So it's getting closer and closer to a flowering. So excited. Probably have another year. And then this right here, this little leaf right here, it just kind of popped up out of nowhere. So I've been watching. I'm kind of expecting another little growth to come up from this leaf because it did just come up out of nowhere. So she may end up with 2 directions of growth eventually. I love this thing. Look how gorgeous those leaves are. Just loving that. Absolutely just loving the shininess, the green apple look, the little striations in there. Look at that. Oh my goodness, just gorgeous. I could go on about this one forever, forever. Again, about 250, 300 parts per million. I need to make sure I don't put these where when I get up, I forget and I step on them. So we already talked about the chocolate chip, so we're just gonna put him on the shelf right here. And my royal chip. Let's talk about old Chip here. Look how floofy he is. And this is what I'm talking about when I say once they get settled in and comfortable, they'll just kind of take off. This was my first Loria type Dendrobium. I got it from Yoshi over at Orchids by the Lake in April of 22, and it is in a bark and moss mixture, and I can tell I need to water because the moss under here is no longer damp. I usually will put my finger in one of the little holes and feel the moss here, because if it's damp down here, I'm not going to drench it because I don't want the roots down here to get waterlogged. But look at all the active root tips. Whoops. See, this is how I almost knocked the other one over, because I almost knocked her over with this one. Lots and lots and lots and lots of new growth. Like we have a new growth here. I think last I counted there were 6 new growths. And every time I pick this thing up, I always find something new. I am just loving this thing. I'm not going to repot it. It has been in this, you know, in April it'll be 2 years. But there's nothing wrong with the media. The bark and everything is still nice and firm. And this right here, the white that you see, I know a lot of you are going to say that's salt buildup, but it's not. It's just the white that comes off of the bark from, I think, the processing, because it's been that color since, wow, before I started fertilizing. Because I don't like to fertilize my orchids when I first repot them for about the first 3 to 6 weeks. Even if they are actively growing, I might add a supplementation like CalMag or something, but I'm not going to put fertilizer in there for the first 3 to 6 weeks. This girl gets 300 parts per million every time I water her, because look at her. Look at her. And she has lots and lots and lots of little buds in there. So I'm hoping that she explodes soon, because I love these blooms. I love the Loria blooms. They're so cute and different all at the same time. And then my last Loria is the Silver Wings crossed with Nita, again, Orchid Supply Store purchase. Now when I first put her in here, she was suffering with roots. And as you can see, that is no longer a problem for her. She is currently working on this growth, which is the fattest cane that she's grown since I've had her. And then she's recently working on this one. Okay, it's a little smaller growth, but it is now 2 directions of growth for her. Again, we're getting 3 leaves, which she came with 3 leaves, so she was already kind of at that point. The first one that regrew for me was this one, and it was just a single leaf, but I believe that was a stress growth, because after that, everything just kind of went and did its thing. This one does dry out a little bit quicker because I don't have moss in this one. This one simply only has small perlite, couple of grow stones, and small medium Orchiata bark. So she does get watered more often than the others, if I remember. And this is why I said they can take some drought, so you don't have to keep it damp, but they prefer to stay damp. They do not like to dry out. They don't like cool temperatures. Your Lotorias prefer warm to intermediate. So if it's kind of like with Phalaenopsis, if you're comfortable, they're going to be comfortable. They can take some extremes as long as it's not all the time or long term, because when I had my windows replaced back January of 23 or 22, good God, I can't even remember when it was. It had to have been 23. Either way it goes, they took out all the windows in my house, and it was 36 degrees outside. And we all know what happens when you open windows on opposite sides of a room. You get that crosswind. And even though I had like sheets up and had them protected, had them in closets, the bathroom, a couple of them did get a little bit cold. It was only for about 8 hours, but she was fine. She was fine. This was the only one I had at the time. She did fine. So they can take some extremes, just not long term. They do prefer, like I said, warm to intermediate. They don't need to cool down. They grow all year round. They're the best. They're just the best. They're like the Dendrobium Phalaenopsis, which has nothing to do with the Phalaenopsis, by the way. The only reason they call it a Dendrobium Phalaenopsis is, if I can get this down far enough, because this cane is like really high. I saved these blooms to show you, is a lot of people say that their blooms resemble a Phalaenopsis bloom. So that is kind of why they call them the Phalaenopsis Dendrobium. I can kind of agree. I think they do kind of resemble a Phalaenopsis bloom in a way. But this one is my very first Dendrobium Phalaenopsis, because I didn't know it was a Dendrobium Phalaenopsis until Well, this year when she bloomed, plus from her growth after I kind of learned some things, because it was sold as a nobile type orchid. And after I learned what a nobile actually looks like, which these do not look very similar. Well, that's a poor example because she's so tiny, but you know what I mean. But this is what they call the Phalaenopsis. And again, these can take extreme temperatures if you gradually put them out there. So this one I grew back in 2023. She grew outside for that year. And I'm really considering growing her outside again next year or this year, 2024, along with my other Phalaenopsis dendrobiums and my, I call it an Australian Antelope Phalaenopsis. I'll show you that in a minute, because look at the stalker of a growth. So I got it with these two here. She grew this. She didn't do anything for a while, probably a year. Then she grew this right here, this growth here, which was shorter than the previous in 22. And this is all grasshopper damage. This is kind of what's keeping me from wanting to put them outside. Can you see that damage? That's kind of keeping me from wanting to grow outside, because when they come back in, they kind of look like this, and that just looks so tacky. But this is what she grew this year. So here's the top of 2022, and here's 2023 that doesn't even fit into the frame all the way, but if we push it back that way, you can see. And off that cane, she also grew this spike, and this spike at one point had about 5 blooms on it, but 3 of them have already fallen off, and these are starting to go over, but I'm just going to leave them until they fall off. And then she also is got an eye down there that's been kind of like that for the last few months, and this one I've had since 2019. Bought at Nick's Nursery, or Nick's Garden Center. I call it Nick's Nursery, but it's Nick's Garden Center here in the Denver area. She is in, obviously, a clay pot with charcoal bark, large perlite, so this kind of size perlite, and I think there's a little bit of moss maybe on the edge because she wasn't growing any roots, but there's not a lot of moss in there, and not enough to say there's moss in there. This one I will water every 7 to 10 days. They don't require a lot of water. They're very drought tolerant, just like their Phalaenopsis. I'm going to call them counterparts for lack of a better term, because they're called the Phalaenopsis orchid or dendrobium. They can take high temperatures, as in heat, but don't take them from your air-conditioned home or the perfect nursery and then just throw them outside in 90-degree weather. Just like with any other plant, whether it's an orchid, any other house plant, you want to ease them out there. So put them out there for a little bit as the temperatures start to warm up, bring it back in before the temperatures drop below what they're used to, take them out, that kind of thing. And you want to ease them out there. Don't just... Here you go. Suck it up, Buttercup. Figure it out. That's what I did with this one. So then I also have this one here. This is a no ID from Ken. He sent it to me along with a Vanda. Oh my goodness. And I don't, oh yes, I do have the date. In October is when I repotted it. So I don't have the date when I got it. Oh well, that is my mistake. I will try to see if I can figure out when I got this thing. But we have lovely new root growth. Now she does have small lava rock on the top. However, down below is just moss and bark. And these roots that you see right here that look all dead, those are the ones that she went in with to get her to this point. So she is starting to replace that root system with all these lovelies here. Not a bad little growth, I would say. She did finish this one, was kind of growing. I thought it was going to push out a spike. It did not. Quickly started this growth. So, and for those of you who are wondering, I use these Velcro straps to control the growth because I do grow in my living room. So if you do grow in your home and you want it a little more controlled, you can use this. You can use ties, zip ties. We all have our little tricks on controlling orchid growth. But this one is one that Ken got, and I guess they didn't come in the best shape. So I do know he had a video a few months ago where he had to get rid of, I think, most of them, if not all of them. So I'm happy to say that this one at least is going to make it for now. And eventually one day we'll see what color it is. I'm not going to lie to y'all. I hope it's not white. Like this white one was pretty. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I just like color. You know, I like the color in my life. Not that white is not a pretty color. I don't know. I just prefer the pinks and the magentas. As you can see, I'm wearing a pink magenta shirt, which by the way, guys, it's so cute. My daughter got it for me. It says, "Don't be a salty heifer." I used to say that to them when they were little. So, all right, now this one is the second oldest Phalaenopsis dendrobium that I got. At one point it was one orchid, and when I went to repot it separated, so I did send one piece to a subscriber and kept this piece. I did send her the better piece and kept this one, but she's doing really well. She's got two growths actually. This one here that she's finishing, and then we've got this new one here. Because there's not a lot of roots in this pot, I don't water her very often. She probably gets watered every, I'm going to say 10 to maybe 14 days, so 10 days to 2 weeks, because she's in a clay pot. She's in small Orchiata and medium Orchiata bark with some small perlite. She does have roots in there, but there's not a lot. I don't want to waterlog them, so I don't water her very often. Now, once I start seeing some nice root growth off of the two growths here, I might increase the watering, but for now, she does look a little sad here with this new growth, but I'm going to let her kind of recuperate because I was over watering her, and she almost did not survive. So now I'm being a little more conservative, and she's also only getting about 50 parts per million of fertilizer because she does not have a lot of roots to absorb anything heavier than that. I keep her in this clay pot right here because even though she has clay at the bottom, she is still kind of top heavy and it kept wanting to tip over. So I do keep it in the clay pot, and there is air space here, but it is breathable. Both of them are non-glazed. So she's getting the air. And then we're going to talk about this one last. Then we have this one, which is an antelope type, which is native to Australia. Correct me if I'm wrong. I got this one again at Nick's Garden Center back in March of 22. She's been in this clay pot since June of 22. She's put off quite the growth. I have cut off several canes that were kind of off to the side to clean her up. But currently she is working on, so finishing this growth right here. This one here is starting to harden off, and then we have this new growth right here. This is also the one I believe, is this the one yes. I actually broke the very tip of this one off, and that is when she pushed out those two growths. So I'm heaping that. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute, peoples. We may have a beautiful lilac. I call her lilac because of the flowers, but we might have one because looks like we have a little bud trying to develop right here. So we may actually see this lovely lady in bloom. And she grew. I got her this way with this wankiness. And to be honest with you, I cannot wait for this to come off because of where she sits on the shelf. She does kind of get in the way. I have a problem with control, apparently. That's what I've been told. And then Mahabeke. Again, this is totally a Nina from Ninja's Orchids. This is your fault, okay? If you see this, you know, I'm just letting you know, your fault. So I need you to take accountability. I would have bought it anyway, but oh my gosh, if you've never seen her Hibiki in bloom, Google the Hibiki or go to YouTube, go check out Nina's Hibiki. Oh my gosh, it's gorgeous, and it just shoots out keikis, and every year I think she removes the keikis and adds them back in, which I may end up starting to do myself because this right here, she's got 3 keikis right here, but where the keikis are sitting is hardened off, but the roots are starting to come down. And guys who have more experience, are those roots long enough for me to remove the keiki and kind of place them in the media around to thicken her up or put her in a separate pot? That would be amazing if you would tell me. I feel like they are because they're a little over 1 inch long. I had her at one time in the same mix as I have my Kingianum, which is small, medium Orchiata Bark, with the exception of I had some perlite added in. She was drinking faster than I could keep up with her. So with her, she is in moss and bark, and then I keep her in this large pot here that does have some, I'm not going to tip it over, I'll just show you some of the rocks that are in here, but they're like really, really big rocks. And I do keep water, so the rocks are about to here, and I do keep water just at the very bottom to help with humidity, and it helps keep this thing from drying out too quickly as well. But look at all of that new growth. I'm hoping, I keep saying that. I guess every video I've got a phrase or a word that I just cling on to and I hold on to it. I am keeping my fingers crossed, there we go, that perhaps we might see a bloom or 2 or 3 clusters this fall of 2023. Because I do know that they bloom in spring and fall, at least that's what I've read, that they can bloom twice a year. So maybe she will grace me this year, if not, definitely next year. I've had her since September of 22. She did come in bloom, so I know she's blooming size. I just have to give her the right care so that she will rebloom for me. She does sit underneath a grow light. She gets lots and lots of light. That might be too much light, but I heard through the grapevine that they really like nice bright light and lots and lots and lots and lots of water. I really am thinking of transitioning this eventually into leca, because the bigger she gets, the harder it is going to be to keep up with her watering, unless I just put her in all moss. That could be an option as well. I believe that's everybody. As far as light, like I said, everybody grows under a grow light with the exception of the ones I told you they live kind of on the floor, basically kind of with leaves and stuff kind of shading them for now. But other than that, most of them live under grow lights or in very bright light east-facing windows between 50 to 300 parts per million, depending on what they're growing in, and what they're doing. Humidity, usually around 40%. Sometimes it can drop as low as 27%. But it's been hanging around the 40% mark, even with the central heating on. The Lotorias, to me, are my favorite. They're just my favorite. I do like the Phalaenopsis ones, but I find them a little more challenging than the Lotorias, because the Lotorias are just like, I'm here as long as you give me water, give me some light, look at me every once in a while, pay attention to me. I'm just going to flourish once I decide that you're a good person and I like it here. Let me know what Dendrobiums you grow, how you grow, where you grow.